Appreciate the call, William. We got, oh boy. Is it eyes?
Yeah.
Just eyes?
3 eyes.
3 eyes?
Yeah. I've talked to you before several times.
Sure.
I say I'm a witch doctor, and I like to talk about how some science proves the existence of spiritual things rather than God. I'd rather say spirit. But anyway, today I want to talk purely politics as it relates to atheism and Christianity, because I believe it's important. It's a right now issue.
Okay.
It's very important.
Okay.
Am I on?
You're on. You
Okay.
may want to turn down your TV and just listen
I
to
want
the
to start out by saying that in World War I, the Russian emperor had no intention of getting involved because, as he saw it, it was basically a contest between Germany and England. England had slave colonies in Africa, India, and China and was stealing all the resources, and the Germans were jealous. But at that time, they only had one colony. That was German East Africa, which later became Uganda. And between the two of them, Germany was the moral force, not England, our ally. At any rate, the Russian emperor was persuaded by the British Secret Service to get involved in the war. They probably were.
Hang on. I put you on hold. I didn't hang up. I'm going to get lynched after this show if I let you ramble on about war stuff. You got to get to a point that's relevant to the show, or we're going to have to move on.
Revolution in Russia. First, the Russian emperor discredited himself with his getting him.
I put you on hold again just to see if you're hearing me.
In church was discredited.
Why do I get the feeling that you're like reading me something off of Wikipedia or Witch Doctorpedia? All right, so lines are actually open again. The phone number's up on the screen. So if you called earlier when the lines were full and got a busy signal, you should be able to get through now. And if I hung up on you earlier, you're welcome to call back with something different. The interesting thing about some of those calls is it's hard to actually get to the point. If we're going to go and figure out exactly where the point we differ is, and I ask for what justification there is. The gentleman who called earlier, who said you're going to get 20 different people with 20 different views of morality, and wouldn't it be nice to have a book that just said what to do? Well, yes and no. It would be simpler if there was a book that said this is what to do, but not necessarily nice, because there's no good reason to think that book, any book, and I know I picked on the Bible earlier, any book, any particular set of morals, there's no way to just say this is right. You have to invoke some authority. In this case, the authority for the Bible is presumed to be some kind of God, some divine inspiration for the words that are in there. And I apologize, I don't find anything in there that I find particularly divinely inspired. I don't find too much in there that's incredibly wise. I've written a rebuttal on the Sermon on the Mount. There's a handful of good advice in the Sermon on the Mount, and there's some really bad advice in there. Take no thought for tomorrow. Don't save anything. Don't worry about it. Be like the lilies of the field. God's going to provide everything you need. That's bad advice. Sorry, it is. We have names for people who live like that. They're hobos. And if that's the kind of life you want, great. But I don't see where it's productive for yourself or anybody else. It's generally considered bad advice. Dad, don't worry about it. God's going to give you everything, And that's why somebody else had to provide a tomb for Jesus, evidently, is because he wandered around without anything. So, but that's not really the point I wanted to get to. When we're talking about morality, to say that you'd get 20 different answers from people, that's a good thing. It's working towards an agreement that gets you to where you can define what is moral and what is not moral. It's not really that hard to suss all this stuff out. You don't need a book. You just need to be human and to be willing to have conversations where you can reach some kind of consensus or agreement on something. You can start with a couple really simple precepts, like I'm alive, I like living, I'd rather be living than dead. I don't need any kind of God to come up with those things. It's simple. I'd rather be alive than dead, which means I'd rather nobody killed me. Now, what's the best thing to do then? Well, I'd like to find some other people who agree. They'd rather not be killed also. And we can get together in a little group and say, we believe that killing other people is bad because then they're dead. Why is this so hard? And so this group gets together and says, we're going to be a cooperative society, and our first principle is nobody is going to kill anybody else, and we're going to enforce this. Now, I won't get off on the enforcing it by killing people who kill people, but you now have a collective society that agrees on one principle, one thing, whether we label it an ethic or a moral, I don't care what label you put on it. We're here to say we don't want to be killed, and we're not going to tolerate people who kill people in our society. And if you want to live with us and benefit from this community, then you have to agree that you don't have the right to kill anybody. Basically, you start with this presumption, which isn't anarchy. It's similar to anarchy. You have every freedom and right you could possibly have until you give them up. And we give them up, sometimes, as soon as we're born, kind of implicitly, as part of our adoption into a society. Some of them you don't get much choice about. You're not going to find a single society on earth, or probably not any decent one that anybody would be able to recognize or find, that's going to allow you to run around killing people. And why would you want to? But that's that's the simple basics of it. Oh, hey, I own stuff. I'd rather not have people steal my stuff. So I'm not going to steal other people's stuff, and I'm going to find people who also don't want their stuff stolen, and we're going to get together and say, hey, you know what? Stealing's bad. If you steal, you can't be a part of our group. Ha-ha. That's how it actually works. The thing is that we have this really terrible inability to grasp changes over long periods of time. We see this when we talk about the evolution debate. Of course, microevolution occurs, but not macroevolution. There's no such thing. Those are fictitious words that somebody adopted to create a dividing line where none exists. Evolution is change, in a biological sense, is change in allele frequency over time. Evolution, in a simple sense, is change. The only thing that's required to get from A to B is time. Natural selection acts upon evolution, and you build diversity. It's a wonderful explanation for the diversity of life. It works. It's true. There's evidence for it. And there's no reason to go supposing that something else happened. The same thing is true when we're talking about morals and ethics. They evolve over time. In our early days, some people wrested some control, and where you had a small society that's like, hey, we don't want to kill anybody, or we don't want to be killed, so killing's illegal, but we can go kill other people and take their stuff. So you get this kind of tribal mentality of our tribe's together, and we're not going to kill each other, but we'll go mess those other people up real good. And by the way, this book advocates that, and even pretends that they're direct orders from God. That God told these people, I'm giving you this land, and I'm giving you that land. And these people over here, they're heathens because they don't want to worship me. And these people over here, I tried to get them to do it, but you're my chosen few. So what I want you to do is I want you to go out and kill all of them and take their stuff. And it happens over and over again. It's just a chronicle of we're going to kill people, we're going to kill people. And it chronicles all their wins because these are the guy who wrote it. But it does chronicle a couple of losses too. Like, for example, there's one time that, they went into battle with God on their side, but they couldn't win because the other guys had chariots made of iron. And evidently chariots made of iron are way tougher than God. You have all of these events, in which, by the way, you can go to ironchariots.org, which is a counter-apologetics wiki I run for more information on that. The thing with all of these events is that I don't want to make a judgment about what is or was or wasn't moral at a particular time, whether or not you go, you have to do what you have to do to survive. But these are messages that are supposed to be from a God, and there's specific tactics in there. It tells you, when you're going to war with somebody, here's what I want you to do, and this is supposedly from God. Go out and stand in front of their city gates and tell them that if they surrender right now and they become your slaves, they get to live. And if they don't do that, go in and kill them. What kind of tactic is that? What kind of choice is that? You're not offering anybody a choice. It may have just been the way of life back then, when we were a bunch of tribal thugs running around killing each other. And we went from a family unit of what is ethical and moral, to a tribal unit of what is ethical and moral, to a city unit of ethics and morals, to a country, to a nation, to international codes. And the hard thing is not in determining so much what is or isn't moral or ethical, it's determining when we disagree, when two groups merge, whose view of morality wins out? Or do neither? Have we both made some mistake? So we tend to build a society where you have the freedoms unless you give them up. And we impose laws preferably at a very limited rate, where there only exist laws to serve the public and prevent imminent harm. Morality has changed over time, just as biology has, and religion has changed over time as well. The things that were moral in the Old Testament started fading out of popularity by the time we get to the New Testament. So instead of a vengeant God, you've got the turn the other cheek God, although he did get mad at those guys changing money in the temple, and rather than, turning the other cheek or giving them a good sermon or telling them how much God loved them and wanted them to stop doing this or doing just about anything else, he got pissed off, left, and went out and handmade a scourge. Didn't go buy one. He didn't pick up a board that was laying around. He didn't, kick over one of the stands and grab a stick. He went out and made a scourge, which means he took a stick and grabbed a whole bunch of straps of leather and modeled it up with, shards of crap and tied it all up. And then he walked back and kicked all their asses. That's the loving, turn the other cheek God. I think there might be a little bit of a disorder going on there. I mean, just a guess. But it changes over time, and the things that were immoral in the New Testament fade as well. You've got Paul, who's opposed to marriage in general, but then you move on, and they have to merge with other religions, and you can see the influence of the Hellenization of Judaism, and then the impact of the Roman deities and what they worshipped on Christianity. By the way, in early Rome, as we talked about on the show before, Christians were called atheists. That was the name. They didn't believe in the Roman gods. They were atheists. And Athanasius actually stood up and said, no, sorry. We're not atheists. We believe in a God, just like you do. It's just we have this one here. It's those nasty Greeks who are the atheists because they believe in no gods. So that's kind of how the word got shifted. In strict literal sense, you've got theism, which is the proposition or belief that there is a God, and atheism is a response to that. It means without theism or no theism, not no God in the simple sense that requires absolute certainty that morons like Josh McDowell and Ray Comfort would like to have you believe. But and you guys should really call now, because I'm running out of water. Phone's up on the screen. We're on for another 15 minutes or so, and after the show's over, we're going to El Arroyo. I'm sure they'll put that up as well. I just did plug it. See, they flashed me red. I'm ahead of you today. That's what happens when there's nobody else here. Oh, you can take that. Yeah, thanks. I still have my spare. Muhammad the Cup died. So instead, we have Muhammad the sacred cow, who's now sitting on my. This all started because a teacher got in trouble for letting her students name a teddy bear Muhammad. Anyway, I was off track. Where was I? Talking about morals and ethics and how things change over time. Yeah, so things that were taboo and immoral in the Victorian age changed. And all of a sudden you get to the 60s and they're wearing mini skirts with long hair and having sex with anybody who walks near them. Wow, morality really changed. Oh no, this is a backlash. This is the influence of godless heathens trying to destroy our world and take prayer out of school and punish us all and make sure God has no influence over anything. So we've seen that all of that changes. Morality changes, your religion changes, and those modern, moderate, and liberal Christians who generally I like and get along with, who agree that church-state separation is an important factor in religious neutrality, those people who agree that science education is critical and that it should be completely devoid of religion and religious proselytizing. I'm all for having religious teaching in school, comparative religions. I'll even go for a Bible as literature class as long as there's no proselytizing or faith-based anything in it. Those liberal and moderate Christians who are in agreement on those points, that's great. But you know what? You've departed from orthodoxy. You are engaging in a religion that is very, very different from the one that was founded. Oh, I'm sure at the core, you can just say, well, that it's all about a personal relationship with Jesus, and that's all that matters. Great. And you probably won't be doing anything to legislate your beliefs on anybody else. So we can be on the same page there. And we can agree on tons and tons of issues and how the world needs to work. And as long as you don't come and say, this is the way the world needs to work, and when I say why, you say, because God said so. You have to have a good, sound, secular justification for something like that. Because God said, you remember when you were a kid and you'd ask your mom for something and she'd say no and you'd say why, and she said, because I said so. Boy, it drove me crazy. I don't know any kid that's ever been satisfied with that answer. You know why? Because it's not an answer. It's not an explanation. It's an edict. It is, this is the way it is because it is. It's completely unsatisfying, and you should be unsatisfied. And the kids out there should question everything, and the adults out there should question everything, and more of you should start questioning everything right now. I realize that maybe it's not a big issue, maybe it's not a big deal for you, cool. In the meantime, things are changing and things are being done. The thing I talked about earlier, where you've got an elected representative going into the legislature and basically saying to the atheists, you don't have any right to be here, get out of that chair, what you're saying is dangerous, our children shouldn't know that your philosophy exists, you just hate God. I mean, the next thing she's going to do is say, you're persecuting me by sitting up there and saying something negative about what I believe. Sorry. Ridiculous ideas are deserving of ridicule. It's by definition.